President of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, arrives in Moscow with his family receiving political asylum after the fall of the Syrian government by terrorist groups. The Israeli occupation forces carried out 4 massacres in the Gaza Strip, killing 50 people in less than 24 hours. And in Venezuela, the second day of the International Colloquium Ayacucho 1824-2024 is underway. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. And now we begin with the information. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad arrived in Moscow with his family on Sunday after being granted political asylum in Russia, according to local media reports. The media has confirmed that the head of state arrived on humanitarian grounds after militants from terrorist organizations launched a major offensive in Syria against government forces on Saturday. The groups entered the country's capital, Damascus, taking government institutions together with key media headquarters, effectively seizing power in the country. In this context, the Russian Foreign Ministry urged all parties involved to renounce to the use of violence and resolve governance issues by political means. And after the terrorist takeover in Syria, the extremist groups have been looting and robbing several institutions throughout the capital, Damascus. This way, local news outlets informed the groups struck the Central Bank of Syria, transferring parts of the money from and to unknown destinations, while another sum was extracted in cash on bags. At the same time, the Iranian embassy was vandalized, with diplomats fleeing the building to protect their lives. In addition, rebel groups entered the area of Shahida Zainab and looted the shrine of Sayyida Zainab, grandson of the Prophet, a sacred place for many Syrians. During the incident, they set on fire the tomb and the flames spread to adjacent buildings, affecting various infrastructures. In this context, the Syrian Prime Minister Mohammed al-Jalili addressed the country and called citizens to spread security and think rationally.
Dear Syrians, who are dear to my heart, and who I am to you and you are to me, I am at home. I did not leave it, because I belong to this country, and I do not know any other country other than my homeland. In these times when people feel anxiety and fear, although they are all keen in this country and its institutions and facilities, I am keen on the public facilities of the state, which does not belong to me and does not belong to anyone else, but belongs to all Syrians. Therefore, we extend our hand to all Syrians who are keen on the facilities in this country, and that is to preserve its facilities. I urge all citizens not to touch any public property, because in the end, it is their property and I am at home. I did not leave it, and I do not intend to leave it, except in a peaceful way, to ensure the continuation of the work of public institutions and facilities of the state, and to spread security and reassurance to the citizens, that everyone will think rationally, and to think about their homeland and their country. We extend our hand even to the opponents who extended their hand and ensure that they did not touch anyone belonging to the Syrian homeland. I have always worked day and night in the private sector, in the public sector, and in the government. And in front of my eyes, I see the interest of this country, and the interest of this country, and we believe in Syria, for all Syrians, and that it is the country of all its people, and that this country can live in peace.
And also in the scenario following the seizure of the Syrian capital by armed terrorist groups, attacks by Israeli forces against military bases were reported in Damascus. Precisely, the attacks by the Israeli aviation caused a fire in a residential area of the capital where state and service offices were located. In the aftermath of the government takeover by terrorist organizations, Israel announced the reinforcement of its troops and the entry of military tanks in the buffer zone of the Syrian Golan Heights and nearby areas. And the Syrian army authorities reported that Israeli occupation forces took control of a Syrian military base on Mount Hermon in the Golan Heights. The takeover took place after Syrian troops withdrew from the area amidst the crisis in the country following the seizure of power by armed groups. In this regard, Tel Aviv troops confirmed the deployment in the buffer zone between Israel and Syria, but without revealing the specific locations. And the first images of Damascus this Sunday after the overthrow of the government of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad re-edited the events that took place in Libya in the year 2011. The events of the last few hours in the capital could be the prelude to a dark future for the Arab nation, now in the hands of terrorist groups, many of them in dispute. In October 2011, the US-driven rebellion to overthrow and assassinate the President Muammar Gaddafi also began with promises of freedom and development. Just like today's images, terrorists ransacked government headquarters and state institutions. Months later, the richest nation in North Africa was fragmenting and plunging into a crisis of violence and poverty that it has not been able to overcome in 13 years, with thousands of dead, missing, and displaced people. And now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Israeli occupation forces carried out 4 massacres in the Gaza Strip, killing nearly 50 Palestinians in the last 24 hours. During the day, the Tel Aviv regime's troops shelled the Al-Quraysh refugee camp located in the center of the Gaza Strip, killing more than 20 civilians. Similar actions were registered in several areas of the coastal enclave against homes and infrastructure that serve as shelters for Palestinian families. According to the most recent health report, in the massacres registered during the last 24 hours, at least 44 Palestinians were killed and 74 others were wounded. Figures that, according to official data, raised the number of fatalities to over 44,700 people and of wounded to over 106,000 people since October 2023, when the Israeli war against the Gaza Strip began. And Israeli settlers took to the streets on Sunday as part of a demonstration in rejection of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's policies. The demonstrators gathered in the square in Tel Aviv to join the families of more than 100 hostages who remain in the Gaza Strip in their weekly demonstration in front of the Israeli army headquarters. In this regard, they condemned the inability of Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet to reach a ceasefire agreement with the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas, which would allow the return of the hostages. According to a poll published by local media, 71% of Israelis support an agreement to free the hostages in exchange for a halt to the war on Gaza. And we now move on to other topics. The Speaker of the South Korean National Assembly, Woo Won-sik, and called the joint exercise of presidential power by the Prime Minister and the ruling party unconstitutional. This comes after Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and the leader of the ruling People's Power Party, Han Dong-hong, vowed to minimize the chaos through an early and orderly departure of the president after announcing their decision to jointly exercise presidential power. He also criticized the ruling power for not participating in the constitutional due process of voting for a no-confidence motion. The Speaker of the South Korean National Assembly recalled that if the Prime Minister and the ruling party were to jointly exercise presidential power, they would be in flagrant violation of the Constitution.
It is a clear commitment that the Prime Minister and the ruling party will jointly exercise the right of the President, which no one else has given, without participating in the legal procedures that ask for the responsibility of the President.
And also the President of the National Assembly of South Korea, Woo Won-sik, reminded that only the people can grant and remove presidential power and that the process must be governed by the Constitution.
I would like to start by saying that the legislation is not in the hands of the people. The President cannot decide the adoption of the power of the President. The power of the President and the adoption of the power of the President are both from the people, and the procedure must be in accordance with the principles of the Constitution and the sovereignty of the people.
In other news, in Burkina Faso, the presidential junta appointed a former Minister of Education, Culture, Arts and Tourism, Riptalba Jean Emmanuel Ouedraogo, as new Prime Minister. This way, the President Ibrahim Traoré dissolved the government and decreed on Friday the termination of functions of the former Prime Minister, Apollinaire Joachim Clem de Tambala, who served as head of 3 successive governments since 2022. The decree expresses that the Prime Minister's official functions are terminated, with the country's Secretary General of Government making the announcement. Burkina Faso, a previous French colony, has prioritized restoring national sovereignty and has frequently criticized Western powers.
The President of Burkina Faso, head of state, in line with the Constitution and the Transition Charter of October 14, 2022 and its amendment of May 25, 2024, decrees that Mr. Riptalba Jean Emmanuel Ouedraogo is appointed Prime Minister.
And the former president of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, won the elections held this Saturday in the West African country and will take office as head of state for a 4-year term. Mahama, candidate of the National Democratic Congress Party, beat the candidate of the New Patriotic Party, the MPP, the current Vice President Mahmoudou Bawumia, winning the presidential election. After the result was known, Bawumia conceded the defeat and expressed his congratulations to Mahama for the victory, while expressing his full support for the transition process. Mahama served as the nation's president from the year 2012 to 2017, the first president born after Ghana's independence from the United Kingdom in 1957. And in other news, the Russian government announced Ukraine's refusal to engage in dialogues on the conditions for peace negotiations. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov detailed that the proposal for peace negotiations have already been presented by the Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, they have been repeatedly rejected by the Ukrainian side, whose authorities maintain the refusal to start talks. Recently, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, by decree, prohibited himself and his administration from any contact with the Russian executive cabinet to discuss diplomatic agreements. The last round of talks between Moscow and Kiev to reach an agreement to end hostilities took place in the year 2022 and have not been resumed since. We now have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Venezuela, the second day of the International Colloquium Ayacucho 1824-2024 under the motto Unity, Sovereignty and Peace is underway. The event that takes place in the spaces of the Rómulo Gallegos Center for the Latin American Studies of the Caribbean, the CELAC, is held within the framework of the bicentennial of the Battle of Ayacucho and counts with the participation of more than 20 national and international speakers who during their speeches highlighted the impetus of the peoples of the Americas in the face of Spanish colonialism. In this event, a series of presentations and exhibitions have been developed in which the importance of this event will be remembered. The meeting was installed on Saturday, November 7th, with the objective of establishing a space for reflection on the historical significance of this historic event. And during the second day of the International Colloquium of Ayacucho, the representative of Colombia, Rocío Castellanos, emphasized that this battle represented the liberation of the peoples of the Americas from the colonization of the Spanish Empire.
The Battle of December 9, 1824 in the Ayacucho Pampas transformed the project of liberation of South America. The liberation of what was expected to be only South America was reflected in the Latin American press as the liberation of Spanish America. It was the warlike confrontation that supported the subsequent construction of a discourse of Latin American union. Thank you very much.
We continue in Venezuela as the candidates for justices of peace visited communities throughout the country on Saturday as part of the campaign ahead of the December 15th election. In this regard, the president of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, explained that in the upcoming days, nominees will share their proposals with the communities and also listen to their needs. In these elections, more than 52,000 Venezuelans are nominated to become communal justices of peace, which will have the role of promoting coexistence and dealing with local problems pertaining to communities. And the government of the Ecuadorian province of Napo, Marlene Cabrera, resigned from her post in the midst of protests against the construction of a maximum security prison in the Amazonian community of Archidona. In a press conference broadcast on social networks, the now ex-representative of the executive in Napo explained that she is leaving her position due to the lack of answers from the national government to the active forces that have been protesting for 5 days against the construction of the new prison. Cabrera explained she requested information and was told only that the project was reserved. Marlene Cabrera will be replaced by Gary Rivadeneira, who was appointed as the new governor of the province by Executive Decree 476. And Bolivia is negotiating the construction of a bioceanic train that will connect ports in Peru on the Pacific Ocean and Brazil on the Atlantic in South America. After a meeting with his Brazilian counterpart, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, the president of Bolivia, Luis Arce, said that the project to build a corridor between the port of Santos in Brazil and a Peruvian port has been revived. In this sense, he confirmed the beginning of the works to develop the railroad, which will be financed by China. Bolivia's geographic location in the center of South America allows it to form regional integration projects and blocs such as the Andean Community of Nations and Mercosur. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.